Good morning to you all. Excellency President Ali Bongo Ndimba, the President of Gabon, Honorable Minister Sameh Shukri, the designated President of COP27, Mr. Ovais Sarmad, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, all of the distinguished panelists, again, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So we're preparing then through this important gathering today for COP27. We're all hoping for a successful gathering focusing on implementation, as mentioned. We recognize that our meeting today in Gabon is one of the main building pillars for the success of COP27. It's an opportunity to emphasize that Africa, while it is suffering the most from the deterioration of the climate, while it is suffering the most from all of the shocks that we have been exposed to, from COVID-19 to the implications of the Ukraine war, to the impact on the increases of food prices, fuel mix, and indeed the financial challenges. Despite all of that, Africa can provide solutions. From the very first stop that we had in the preparation of COP27, a few months ago in Kisumu, in Kenya, the local communities, the cities, the leaders of communities showed that localization through partnerships can provide solutions in the implementation. In our second stop in Côte d'Ivoire, through the CEO Summit, focusing on rebuilding Africa, localization and innovation, which is a mix of finance and innovation, that Africa again can provide solutions. On our stop today, with this very rich agenda that is prepared by the government of Gabon, by the UNFCCC, and the many partners from the UN system and the regional development banks and the World Bank Group, we can really emphasize that here we are all about solutions and implementation. We can spend forever talking about the crises and the problems that are facing us and how the short-term deterioration in international cooperation, the problems of tensions between the conventional powers and the emerging powers, and the distrust in the global system. We can always talk about that forever. But the world, the climate, and the people are waiting for solutions. As mentioned by many of the negotiators from around the world, especially from Africa, that we don't need to negotiate more texts. The Paris agreements and the build-up since then through Marrakesh and then the other many summits that we had, and then more recently in Glasgow, we have sufficient documents that we can build on in order to provide these global solutions. So what I'm expecting as an African, as an Egyptian, as a person who believes in international cooperation from COP27 are basically 5 things. First, a holistic approach in dealing with matters related to sustainability, abandoning this misleading reductionist approach for sustainability to mean only climate action, and climate action to mean only mitigation, and mitigation to be reduced to carbon and carbon pricing. All are important, but that needs really to be put in the context. We cannot really fulfill climate action by ignoring adaptation. We cannot really do climate action properly if loss and damage is lost in endless discussions. We cannot provide a holistic approach while adequate finance is still missing. The second part, as mentioned earlier, and overemphasized, I would say, and we cannot say enough on that, from the Egyptian presidency, from the many speeches of His Excellency the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and from the Egyptian president, and everybody is concerned. It's all about implementation, implementation, implementation. We need better data systems. During the coming days, I can challenge that we all are not going to be quoting one figure on anything. There is a great deal of discrepancy in the assessments of the extent of the crisis. People are going to be talking about trillions of gaps without really having a unified figure to refer to. So we need really a better data system with more granularity in order to have better design policies at the national level, at the local level where it matters. For implementation, we need really finance and good cooperation in technology. Then the third point, I would be expecting more and more, and this is very much a regional gathering, this Climate Week, that regional dimensions are important to complement the global effort and the national efforts. I'm proud to see that for the first time in the preparation of the COP, in addition to the great work of climate weeks, that the Egyptian presidency, along with the champion, this includes my good colleague Nigel Topping, and the regional economic commissions, we had 5 regional roundtables, starting with Africa, then we had a stop in Asia, a third stop in a couple of days in Latin America, a fourth one in the Arab world, and a fifth one in emerging Europe, in order to do the proper matchmaking between the available finance and the promise coming from the real sector where it matters, from industry, from agriculture, and from building the real economy and creating jobs. Again, another example of a holistic approach. The fourth aspect of the work that I mentioned very briefly, and again I'll be very brief about it, which is basically localization. And all of what we do globally, regionally, and nationally will mean nothing until it impacts the people and their lives and livelihoods. The questions are always for us. You have all of these great summits, great meetings. What's in it for us? What's the impact of what you do in the climate action? And here, this is a strong reminder that our work in the climate action, while focusing on climate-related matters, it needs to deal with all of the crises that we are facing today. And it is not difficult, given the good examples of holistic approaches in the implementation. And the final part, it's all about finance. Without finance, nothing will happen. It will be just aspiration, hopes, lists of dreams and dreams without fulfillment, ending into frustration. And here I'd like to quote from the excellent speech made by Ambassador Wael Abul Majd just a couple of days ago in the SCAP meetings, that finance steadily increased over the last decade from 365 billion from 2011 to 2012, and then we have a better figure of 632 billion. But we need easily to multiply this figure by at least 6 times in order to meet the requirements of climate action. And here you have the staggering figures, the worrying figures, that more than 60% of climate finance are coming from debt. If you are from a typical African country, and we are all from there, either you have one of 3 problems. Either you are facing a debt management challenge, or a debt management crisis, or a debt management catastrophe. So it is not fair for the African countries to borrow more to fix the problems that have been caused since the first industrial revolution by asking them to borrow more and more and more and adding to the debt problems. Where are the grants that have been offered? Where are the investments that have been promised? We need really to have a better job in that front. I'm expecting from the Egyptian presidency, and very quickly I'll give only the subtitles, given that we'll have opportunities during the sessions to emphasize on them. The first one, we're not forgetting the 100 billion. 100 billion is still there on the agenda. But even if we get the 100 billion, which we never had, it's only 5% or less of what's required. So we need to think about what will happen after post-2025. The second part, that we need to rely less on debt and more in investments. And we're encouraged by the promise of the G funds and the 130 trillion. And we're working hard in order to provide the project pipeline for that. The third aspect, that we need really more emphasis on financial innovation. I'd like to commend the excellent work by Gabon and other countries in trying to develop carbon credit markets, but we need to tailor them more to be beneficial for the needs and requirements of the developing economies. And the fourth aspect of the work is requiring better approach on debt swaps. But this needs a new generation of debt swaps into investments into climate and nature. Then we have indeed the more work required in order to rely on ESG finance, and we're waiting with great enthusiasm to the outcomes of a report that was commissioned by the Secretary General in that regard. And finally, it is the role of the ministers of finance, and I see a few of them in the room, that we need to have better alignment between the budget of the state and the climate action. Public-private partnerships are required through budget that is fully aligned with the climate finance, and external finance will not come unless the budget of the state is sending the right signals. Having said that, with this kind of rich agenda waiting for us in COP27, focusing on implementation and solutions, we can really demonstrate that the most who suffered from the climate deterioration can be among those who are leading the solutions for a better future. Thank you so much.